Sometimes the bravest thing isn't holding on. It's letting go with love, carrying the memories without bitterness, and finding the strength to be grateful for a heart you were lucky enough to know, even if it was never yours to keep. Some nights, you feel it before you see it. The way the world you thought you built on steady ground starts to crack, slow and quiet at first, until you realize it's been breaking all along, and you were just too stubborn or too in love to notice. You ever get that gut feeling something's wrong, but you shove it down, tell yourself you're just overthinking, just being insecure? Yeah, that was me for way too long. I met Mia about 3 years ago at this party one of my college buddies dragged me to, and let me tell you, I was not in the mood to meet anyone that night. I was sitting there, drink in hand, probably looking like I wanted to punch a hole through the wall, when my friend Jake waved this girl over and introduced us. She had this bright smile, the kind that made you feel like maybe the night wasn't a total waste, and she didn't seem fazed at all by how closed off I was acting. I don't even remember what we talked about exactly, just that she did most of the talking, and somewhere between laughing at one of her terrible jokes and the way she kept tucking her hair behind her ear, I agreed to give her my number. Problem was, I wasn't really looking for anything serious. I'd just gotten ghosted by my ex. Let's call her Emily, who I had stayed friends with after we broke up, though calling it friends is probably generous. She had a way of making me feel like I was always chasing something I was never gonna catch. Mia texted me first a couple days later, and I remember staring at her message way longer than I should have before replying. It wasn't that I didn't like her. It was that I wasn't sure I was ready to like anyone yet, but she didn't give up easily, and before I knew it, we were talking every day. At first, it was a long-distance thing. She was finishing school in Oregon, and I was already working in Washington. It meant a lot of late nights on the phone and even longer drives on the weekends, for hours each way, sometimes 5 depending on traffic. And somehow it felt worth it. She made it feel worth it. After she graduated, she moved up to my city. We found a little apartment just outside downtown. Small but cozy, and for a while it really did feel like we were building something real. But no matter how good things got with Mia, there was always this shadow hanging over me. A shadow shaped like Emily. I didn't bring her up much. At least I tried not to. But Mia caught on faster than I thought she would. Every now and then, a story about Emily would slip out of my mouth without me realizing it, like a bad habit. Emily used to say this, or Emily believed that, like she was some kind of philosopher and I was just the idiot who forgot to move on. I saw the way Mia's eyes would dim when I mentioned her. I hated myself every time I saw it, but I couldn't seem to stop. Thing was, I thought I had made peace with the past. Thought that when Emily stopped answering my texts 2 years ago, that was it. Closure by silence. Clean break. But then this past January, everything changed. I woke up one night, couldn't find Mia next to me in bed, so I wandered out into the living room. There she was, on the couch, knees pulled up to her chest, staring at her phone with that look people get when they're trying not to break apart completely. At first, I thought maybe she'd gotten bad news, something about her family or work, but when I stepped closer, I saw it. Her Facebook was open, and there, plastered across the screen, was a photo of Emily. Engaged. Smiling. Happy in a way I hadn't seen her look. Not even back when we were together. Mia didn't know I saw. I just stood there like an idiot, feeling this pit open up inside me. Like I'd lost something I didn't even realize I was still holding on to. And that was the moment everything started unraveling. The next morning, I acted like nothing had happened, even though it felt like there was a weight sitting on my chest, making it hard to breathe, hard to even look Mia in the eye without feeling like the world's biggest fraud. I kissed her goodbye before heading to work, packed my guilt deep down where I thought it couldn't touch me, and told myself I just needed some time to sort my head out. Problem was, time only made it worse. It started small, stupid even. I'd be driving home from work and suddenly my mind would drift back to all the things Emily and I had planned once upon a time, all the things that never happened. I'd sit in traffic, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, wondering how she could look so damn happy without me when half the time, I still felt like I was putting myself back together. Mia would ask me how my day was, and I'd smile and tell her it was fine. I'd sit next to her on the couch, pretending to watch TV while my mind was 1,000 miles away, back in a life that didn't exist anymore. I kept telling myself it was normal, Seeing an ex move on was bound to stir up some old feelings, some regrets, but I wasn't supposed to drown in them. The first real crack showed when Mia caught me zoning out during a movie night. She nudged me gently and laughed. "You're in another universe, aren't you?" I smiled, lied through my teeth, and told her I was just tired. But lying to her didn't sit right with me. She deserved better than some guy who couldn't get his head straight, better than someone who was there but not really there. And every time I looked at her, I hated myself a little more for not being able to give her what she deserved. The crying started not long after. It wasn't like I sat around bawling my eyes out for hours. It was more like these short, violent bursts that hit me when I least expected it. I'd be sitting in the dark, phone in hand, scrolling through memories I had no business clinging to, and suddenly, I'd feel my whole body betray me. Shoulders shaking, breath catching in my throat like a kid who'd skinned his knee and didn't know how to stop hurting. Mia caught me once. It was late, close to 3 a.m., and she came looking for me when she woke up and found the bed empty again. She didn't say anything at first, just stood there in the doorway in her oversized t-shirt, looking at me with this soft, worried expression that made me want to curl up into nothing. I wiped my face, mumbled something about feeling stressed at work, and she nodded like she believed me, or maybe like she wanted to. The worst part was, she didn't push. She just sat down next to me, close but not touching, like she was giving me space to come to her when I was ready. I wasn't ready, not even close. The next day, she gently suggested therapy. Said maybe talking to someone could help me figure out whatever was weighing me down. I brushed her off so fast it made my own head spin, muttering about how I didn't need a stranger telling me how to fix my life. Truth was, I was scared. Scared if I opened my mouth, everything I had shoved down would come pouring out, and I wouldn't be able to stop it. Scared I'd have to admit that part of me, the selfish, broken part, still loved someone who had left me in the rearview mirror a long time ago. Weeks went by like that. Mia pretending not to notice, and the distance between us grew so wide. Some nights it felt like we were sleeping in different worlds. And then, one morning over breakfast, when I thought maybe I could finally get a handle on it, Mia dropped her spoon into her cereal bowl, looked me dead in the eye, and asked, "Are you still in love with her?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. And for the first time since this whole nightmare started, I didn't have a lie ready. I wish I could tell you I answered her right then and there, looked her in the eye like a man and told her the truth. But the reality is, I just sat there frozen, staring at my half-eaten plate of eggs like it might save me from myself. Seconds passed, maybe minutes, but it felt like an entire lifetime stretching between us, heavy and unbearable, like some storm building that we both knew was about to break. Finally, I shook my head, tiny, pathetic, and said no. A lie. A weak, miserable lie. I told her no, that it wasn't about Emily, that I was just stressed, tired, not myself lately. She watched me carefully, that little line forming between her brows that always came out when she didn't quite believe what she was hearing but didn't want to fight about it either. Mia just nodded slowly, as if she were filing that moment away somewhere deep inside herself, somewhere she'd pull from later when it mattered most. She didn't push. God, she should have pushed. Maybe if she had, maybe if I'd been forced to say it out loud, we could have torn the wound open then and there, cleaned it out before it rotted everything between us. But we didn't. We just moved on like cowards, pretending the words we didn't say didn't matter. After that, it only got worse. I started proposing wild ideas, things I thought might somehow fix the cracks I had no idea how to fill. Weekend trips, surprise dates, new furniture for the apartment, hell, even adopting a dog at one point, like slapping duct tape on a sinking ship and calling it seaworthy. And Mia, sweet Mia, she went along with it all, smiling, laughing, leaning into the fantasy that if we just kept busy enough, distracted enough, we could outrun whatever was breaking between us. But deep down, we both knew, you can't outrun a ghost. You can't outrun your own damn heart. Then one night, after a particularly rough few days where I couldn't seem to stop picking fights over nothing, Mia sat me down on the worn-out couch we'd picked out together and said she needed to ask me something serious. I braced myself, expecting the worst. Another question I couldn't answer. Another look of hurt I couldn't take back. She looked me straight in the eye and asked, "Where were you yesterday?" Simple question, right? But my stomach twisted because I knew exactly what she was asking. I hadn't come home after work like I said I would. I hadn't answered her texts. I had driven 3 hours south, parked outside a coffee shop where I knew Emily used to work, and just sat there like a damn fool, half hoping and half dreading I'd see her walk by. Of course, I didn't. She was gone. Had been for years. But sitting there, surrounded by all the places we used to haunt together, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Finality. Cold, merciless finality. I looked back at Mia, heart hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it might crack them. And for once, I didn't lie. I needed to think, I said, which was true, just not the whole truth. She didn't cry, didn't yell. She just nodded, like she had already prepared herself for the slow death we were living through. You can't build a life with someone when half your heart's somewhere else, she said, voice calm, almost too calm, like she was talking about the weather and not the slow implosion of the life we had built together. I wanted to tell her she was wrong. I wanted to tell her I was trying. But sometimes trying isn't enough when the part of you that's supposed to be present is still trapped in a memory you can't let go of. And right there, sitting across from the woman who had loved me more patiently than anyone had a right to, I realized something brutal and ugly. She deserved better than my half-hearted love. Better than being plan B in a life built on regrets. But what I didn't know then, what I couldn't have even guessed, was that Mia already had her own plan. One that didn't include waiting around for a man too broken to see what he had right in front of him. The day it all really fell apart wasn't some dramatic explosion, no shouting, no thrown plates or slammed doors. It was way worse than that. It was quiet, clinical, like the final breath of something that had been dying for a long time and we both knew it but were too damn scared to admit it. It started like any normal Saturday. I made coffee. She made toast. And we sat in silence pretending not to notice how every small movement felt heavy, deliberate. Like we were both walking on glass we couldn't quite avoid shattering. Mia was scrolling through something on her phone. I think it was apartments or maybe job listings, when she looked up at me and said, "I need to talk to you about something." And I don't know why, but my heart just dropped right then. Like somehow I already knew there wasn't going to be any good news coming from those words. She laid it out real simple. Told me she'd gotten a job offer in another city, one she'd applied for a few months ago without telling me. Just to see if she still had options, if she could still build a life that didn't involve waiting around for someone who couldn't give her his whole heart. It wasn't an ultimatum. It wasn't some manipulative move to get me to change or wake up. It was a lifeboat she had built for herself while I was busy drowning in my own regrets. "I'm going," she said, voice steady, almost too steady, like she had rehearsed this 1,000 times in her head already. "I need to be somewhere I'm wanted. Fully. Not just tolerated." And damn if those words didn't hit harder than anything anyone's ever said to me in my life. I opened my mouth to argue, to plead, to say anything that might change her mind. But the words just wouldn't come. Because deep down, in the part of me that was still honest, I knew she was right. Mia didn't deserve to be someone's second choice. She didn't deserve to lie awake at night wondering if she was enough. I watched her pack her things in the days that followed, watched her fold clothes we bought together, wrap little pieces of our life in bubble wrap like they were just things now, not memories. Each item tucked away felt like another nail hammered into the coffin of the life we almost had. I stayed up late that last night, sitting in the dark living room with a whiskey glass sweating in my hand, just listening to the clock tick, wondering when exactly I had become the kind of man who let the best thing in his life slip away without even putting up a real fight. The worst part was knowing I wasn't even mad at her. I was mad at myself. Mad for wasting her patience, her love, her faith in me. When morning came, she stood by the door, suitcase in hand, and gave me one last look. The kind of look you give a place you're about to leave forever. No tears, no dramatics. Just a soft, tired sadness. "I hope you find whatever it is you're still looking for," she said. And with that, she was gone. No promise to stay in touch. No false hope that maybe one day we'd find our way back to each other. Just gone. And as that door clicked shut behind her, it was like the air got sucked out of the room, leaving nothing but the hollow echo of everything we never said, everything we could never be. But the story doesn't end there. Not even close. Because what I didn't know then was that losing Mia was just the beginning. The real blow, the one that would change everything, was still on its way, and when it hit, it would take what little was left of me and rip it wide open. The first few days after Mia left, the apartment felt like it wasn't even mine anymore, like I was just squatting in the ruins of a life somebody else built. Her absence wasn't just a missing toothbrush on the sink or an empty spot in the closet. It was in the way the light felt colder, the way the silence stretched longer than it used to, pressing against my chest until I thought it might cave in. I thought about reaching out. God knows I hovered over my phone 100 times, typing out texts I never sent. I'm sorry, please come back, I'm ready to be better. But every time my thumb hovered over the send button, I stopped. Because what good was a promise when it was made too late? A week later, I got the news. I wasn't even supposed to find out. It was one of those dumb, accidental things, mutual friends posting on Facebook, little comments slipping through the cracks. Emily, the ex. She wasn't just engaged anymore. She was married. Married and living in another country halfway across the damn world. Moved right after the wedding. No fanfare, no long goodbyes, no public declarations, just gone, like she had never even existed here to begin with. And that should have been closure, right? That should have been the nail in the coffin for all the stupid, lingering what-ifs. But instead, it felt like a fist to the gut, knocking the air clean out of me. Because I realized, standing there in the middle of my empty kitchen, clutching my phone like it could somehow hold me together, that I hadn't lost Mia because of some epic, tragic love story with Emily. I had lost Mia because I was too much of a coward to let go of a ghost. Emily wasn't holding me back. I was. And now, when the fog finally cleared, it was too damn late. The next morning, I packed a bag, bought a one-way plane ticket without telling a soul, and left. Left behind the apartment, the city, the life that felt like it belonged to someone else. I convinced myself it wasn't about chasing Emily. I told myself it was about finding closure, about finally putting the past to rest so I could maybe, just maybe, be a whole person again someday. But deep down, in the part of me that still believed in fairy tales and second chances, I think I wanted to see her one last time. To say all the things I never said. To get the apology I thought I deserved, or maybe to give the one I owed. I landed in a city that felt nothing like home, stumbling off the plane with nothing but a backpack and a handful of crumpled dreams. The air was different there, brighter somehow, sharper, and for a second I let myself believe that maybe this was a new beginning, that maybe the universe was giving me one more shot at getting it right. I found her address easily enough, public records, a little bit of online stalking, and before I could talk myself out of it, I was standing on a strange street halfway across the world, staring up at a neat little townhouse with flowers in the window boxes and a doormat that said "Welcome home." Home. The one place I'd never been able to give her. The one thing Mia had been begging me for without ever using those exact words. I stood there for a long time, heart pounding, palms sweating, every rational part of my brain screaming at me to turn around, get a cab, go back to the airport, and forget this whole mess ever happened. But I didn't move. Couldn't move. And then the door opened. And everything I thought I knew, every hope I had clung to like a fool, came crashing down around me in one brutal, irreversible instant. She stepped out onto the porch, laughing at something over her shoulder, her hand tucked into the arm of a man I'd never seen before, and for a second, I felt like I'd walked into someone else's dream, or maybe a nightmare that didn't even belong to me anymore. She looked so different and yet exactly the same. Same easy smile, same way she tilted her head when she laughed, same sunlight in her hair, but there was something else too, something that hadn't been there before, peace. She didn't see me right away. I stood frozen at the end of the street, half hidden behind a tree like some creep out of a bad movie, heart pounding so loud I swore the whole neighborhood could hear it. I watched as she kissed the man on the cheek, casually, like it was the most natural thing in the world, and he grinned down at her like she was the center of his whole damn universe. And that's when it hit me, hard and merciless, the truth I'd been running from for years. Emily had moved on. She wasn't waiting for me. She hadn't been waiting for a long, long time. She hadn't left any pieces of herself behind for me to gather up and piece back together. She was whole. And she had done it without me. I don't know how long I stood there, rooted to the spot like an idiot, watching her live a life that had no room for me in it. Long enough that a neighbor glanced at me suspiciously and started walking a little faster toward their car. Long enough that the man, her husband, no doubt glanced my way with a protective hand on her back, narrowing his eyes like he sensed something out of place. It was the kind of look you give a stranger, not someone you once shared a life with. And why wouldn't it be? I was a stranger now. Finally, I turned and walked away, each step feeling heavier than the last, like I was dragging the weight of all my mistakes behind me. No grand confrontation, no emotional scene, no closure wrapped up in neat little boxes. Just the quiet, brutal finality of a door that had been closed a long time ago and me too stubborn or too stupid to see it. I wandered the streets for hours after that, no real destination, just putting distance between me and the life I had finally accepted was never mine to reclaim. At some point I ended up in a small, smoky bar tucked between two shops that were closing up for the night. I sat at the counter, ordered a whiskey neat, and stared into the glass like it might have answers floating at the bottom. It didn't. I thought about Mia. About the way she used to reach for my hand without even thinking, the way she'd hum while folding laundry, the way she never asked for more than what I should have been willing to give freely. I thought about the way her voice had cracked when she said she needed to be somewhere she was wanted. And I thought about how I had stood there and let her go because part of me was too busy chasing a ghost to see that real love doesn't come with second chances, it comes once, if you're lucky. And you either hold onto it with everything you've got or you watch it slip away and spend the rest of your life wishing you hadn't. I didn't fly home right away. Spend a few days wandering that foreign city, thinking about all the things I had done wrong, all the ways I had let fear and pride and memories chain me down. But eventually you run out of excuses to stay lost. When I finally boarded a flight back home, I knew things were never going to be the same. I wasn't coming back to the life I had before. I was coming back to an empty apartment, an empty bed, an empty heart. And the worst part was knowing it was no one's fault but mine. But what I didn't realize then, sitting there buckled into that cramped airplane seat, staring out the window at a sky that didn't care one bit about broken hearts, was that this wasn't the end of the story. Not yet. Coming home was like walking into a mausoleum built out of old memories, each room echoing with the kind of silence that wraps itself around your throat and refuses to let go. The place smelled stale, untouched for weeks, and even though I opened the windows, lit candles, scrubbed the kitchen counters until my hands were raw, I couldn't scrub away the truth that this wasn't home anymore, it was just a place where I happened to sleep. I unpacked my single bag, not bothering to fold anything, just dumping it into the laundry basket like it didn't matter. Because it didn't. None of it did. The clothes, the furniture, the four walls I used to share with Mia, they were all just relics now, reminders of a life I had set on fire without even realizing I was holding the match. The days blurred together after that. I went through the motions, work, groceries, bills. Smile at the neighbors, nod at the barista, answer emails like I still had a future worth pretending for. But every night I came back to that hollow apartment and it was like the silence grew teeth, gnawing at me until I couldn't stand it anymore. One night, a few weeks after I got back, I found myself scrolling through my contacts with no real plan, just a desperate, stupid need to hear a voice that didn't sound like my own echo. And there it was. Mia's name. Still sitting there in my phone like she hadn't packed up and left with every good thing I ever had. My thumb hovered over the call button. I didn't even know what I would say if she picked up. Sorry? I miss you? I was too broken to see you were the only real thing I ever had? But then I remembered the way she looked when she walked out that door, a head high, heart heavy but determined, and I realized calling her now would be the most selfish thing I could do. She didn't need my regrets. She needed the freedom she fought so hard to reclaim. I put the phone down, turned off the lights, sat in the dark and let it hurt. In the weeks that followed, little pieces of the truth started stitching themselves together in my mind, like some brutal puzzle I couldn't escape. Every smile Mia gave me that I barely noticed. Every time she held me when I was too cold inside to hold her back. Every quiet moment she waited for me to open up, for me to heal, for me to choose her fully, and how I had wasted every single one. I could have loved her the way she deserved. I could have built a life with her that wasn't haunted by the past. But I chose fear. I chose comfort in old wounds because healing meant risking something new, and I was too much of a coward to take that risk. The worst thing about heartbreak isn't the moment it happens. It's the slow, agonizing realization afterward that it was preventable. That you held the tools to fix it, to build something real, and you let them rust away because you were too blind or too proud or too damn broken to use them. I didn't know if Mia was still in the same city. Maybe she had already built a new life somewhere else, surrounded by people who didn't carry the baggage I dragged like an anchor. Maybe she was smiling again, laughing that big, easy laugh of hers, reaching for someone else's hand without hesitation. God, I hoped she was. Because if there was one thing I finally understood, it was that love isn't about clutching and clawing and begging someone to stay. It's about wanting them to be happy even if that happiness has nothing to do with you. Still, there was one last thing I needed to do before I could even think about moving forward. One last thing I owed her, and maybe in some twisted way owed myself too. I had to find a way to say goodbye. The right way this time. Not with half-truths, not with cowardice. With honesty. With everything I should have said before it was too late. I didn't know if she'd ever hear it. Didn't know if it would matter. But sometimes you don't say goodbye for the other person. Sometimes you say it because it's the only way to set yourself free. I didn't rush it. Didn't sit down and hammer out some desperate message the minute the guilt got too loud to ignore. I let the words simmer, rise up slow, the way real things always do when you finally stop trying to force them. When it felt right, really, truly right, I sat at my old kitchen table, a pen in hand, and started writing. Not a text. Not an email. A letter. Something real. Something that felt like it cost me something to send. It wasn't long. It didn't need to be. I wrote about how sorry I was for making her feel like she was competing with a ghost. About how she had never been second best, not once, not for a second, but how I was too broken to give her the love she deserved. I wrote about the peace I saw in her eyes the day she left and how, for the first time, I understood that letting her go was the only decent thing I'd ever done for her. And then I wrote the one truth that mattered most. You were my future, Mia. I just couldn't see it until you became my past. I didn't ask for forgiveness. Didn't ask her to come back. Didn't even leave a return address. When I sealed the envelope, it felt like I was sealing away a version of myself too, the boy who didn't know how to let go, the man who didn't know how to hold on. I dropped it in the mailbox on the corner, watched the little red flag rise, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Relief. A clean ache instead of a messy one. A scar forming where there had once been an open wound. I didn't hear back from her. I didn't expect to. That wasn't the point. The point was that I finally said what needed to be said, not to win her back, not to rewrite history, but to give her and myself the dignity of an honest ending. The one we should have had all along. Life didn't magically get better after that. Healing's not some straight line where you check off boxes and declare yourself fixed. It's messy and slow, like learning to walk again after forgetting how to stand. Some days I missed her so much it physically hurt. The way she used to hum under her breath when she cooked. The way she said my name like it was a secret. Other days I just felt grateful that I had gotten to love her at all, even if I didn't do it right. Grateful that someone like her had once looked at someone like me and thought maybe. A few months later, I moved to a smaller place across town. Nothing fancy, bare walls, second-hand couch, a bedroom just big enough for a bed and a dream or two. But it was mine. And this time I promised myself I wouldn't build a home out of regrets. I'd build it out of hope, brick by slow, clumsy brick. And when I met someone new, because life always finds a way, doesn't it? I didn't rush it. Didn't pretend to be someone I wasn't. I showed her all the broken parts, the patched up seams, the old battle scars. And when she smiled at me anyway, when she took my hand and didn't let go, I understood something Mia had been trying to teach me all along. Love isn't about filling a hole. It's about building something where there was nothing before. Something messy, imperfect, and real. I'll always carry Mia with me. Not as a ghost. Not as a regret. But as a reminder. That love, a real love, deserves to be chosen. Fully. Without hesitation. Without looking back. And now finally I'm ready to choose.